Shadowlands added a whopping 173 mounts over the course of its 2 years, the largest amount of mounts and subsequent collectibles to date. And with this, we're going to go over some of the easiest to obtain out of those straightforward mounts. And coming in at number 10 are the 16 Renown mounts, 4 respective to their covenants. Despite the fact that there are indeed 16, we felt it wouldn't be fair to include all of them since they share the same source. The Renown track levels required to unlock each of these corresponding mounts are as follows. Renown 23 for the Phalynx of Purity, Plaguerot Tauralus, Shadeleaf Rune Stack, and the Sinfall Gargan. Renown 39 for the Eternal Phalynx of Purity, Armored Plaguerot Tauralus, Enchanted Shadeleaf Rune Stack, and the Gravestone Battle Gargan. Added in Shadowlands patch 9.1, the new Renown track extended from 40 to 80 and included brand new rewards. At Renown 45, there's the Elysian Aquilon, Maldraxxian Corpsefly, Ardenweald Wilderling, and finally the Sinfall Gravewing. Later on in the track at Renown 70 are the ultimate mount rewards from levels. The Ascendant Aquilon, Regal Corpsefly, Autumnal Wilderling, and the Obsidian Gravewing. A slight variance in the way one could obtain these mounts is at both 39 and 70 Renown mark. Anima is required to purchase the mounts, as they are not directly rewarded whenever you reach a certain threshold. The total cost of Anima required to purchase the Renown 70 mounts for all 4 covenants is 30k, while you will need only 400 Anima for the 39 track reward. The reason the Anima cost is so low is due to needing 50 Grateful Offerings per mount, totaling 200 Grateful Offerings needed to purchase the mounts. In order to benefit from the Renown rewards, you will want to reach level 80 with at least 1 covenant, as you will unlock access to the Broker Mark of Distinction, allowing for easy transfer of Renown between your characters and alts. This rewards further Anima and Renown between covenants, and making obtaining these mount rewards a lot less tedious than they initially were prior to release. So while the 2 free track reward mounts are relatively easy, the later rewards from both 39 and 70 require a bit more effort, putting them in last place. And today's video was brought to you by HelloFresh. They're helping people kickstart the new year with easy, nutritious, and delicious recipes. Plus, they're offering something pretty cool. Free breakfasts for life. That's 1 breakfast item in your HelloFresh box every week as long as you're subscribed. They've got their biggest menu yet, with over 50 dinner options every week and plenty of healthy choices. You can pick from their calorie smart and protein smart recipes, and everything comes pre-portioned and ready to cook. It's simple and saves time. Personally, I've enjoyed not having to think about what to cook. Everything's just there and it works. Because I know if I put too much time to think about what I have to make when I'm hungry, I'll just order out and ruin my diet. So if you're interested, give it a try. Support the channel by clicking my link and subscribing to HelloFresh. Every purchase helps me produce more videos for you. Going down the list and making it 9th place is the Strange Servant Deathrunner. This is one of the very first mounts introduced in the protoform synthesis portion of Zereth Mortis, given free for completion of the Mount Cipher Online. To get the question for this mount, you will first want to begin unlocking the Dialect Understanding, which is the pet protoform synthesis crafting. Once you wait out the nearly 4-day timer, you'll begin researching the Sopranian Understanding, another near 6-day waiting period. While waiting and doing literally anything else, once the research has concluded, the quest marker for Mysterious Greenery will appear on your map. Completing the quest chain will lead into the next, Finding Tali. From there, the quest that is the most important will be a new Architect, as it will grant you the items needed to craft Deathrunner for yourself. 1 Servant Lattice, 450 Genesis motes, and most importantly, the tools of incomprehensible experimentation. When finishing up the questline, the schematic will be obtained automatically, meaning if you so choose, crafting Deathrunner is essentially free. If waiting for a combined 9.5 days qualifies as free, this mount will be waiting for its owner. While the crafting is straightforward and allows for the gathering of other materials to further explore the protoform synthesis mount repertoire, the tools of incomprehensible experimentation are one of the rarest crafting reagents, meaning if the Deathrunner isn't an interesting mount, there are plenty of other options to use the tools as a base material, namely the Prototype Leaper and unsuccessful Prototype Fleet Pod. The only downside is the Lattice and Genesis motes amount will vary based on what ends up being crafted. All in all, the Deathrunner is a very good gateway into the Zereth Mortis protoform synthesis, making it both a good mount to craft and a roundabout necessity for continuing collection completionism. Due to the sheer amount of time-gated waiting, this mount rides in comfortably at number 9. And at number 8, we have the Arboreal Gulper. Iconic being that it was the first frog mount introduced outside of the Nazmir Goldsink frogs from Gotham. However, instead of a marsh toad, we have a nature-esque frog from the Death Realm Ardenweald. This mount is obtained from the rare spawn Humungaz, who doesn't naturally spawn and is instead a summonable rare located in a small secluded pond area to the northwestern portion of Ardenweald. In the middle of the clearing is an item called Damp Loam. To interact with it, you will need to find an unusually large mushroom. This mushroom is attained from any mob within Ardenweald, averaging between 1% to 3% drop throughout, and may seem like a rather tedious grind. However, there is some good news with this. To the south, between Gormhive and Darkreach, is a small gathering of possessed fae, the Keepers of the Tenders respectively. For some reason, these have a much higher drop rate of the mushroom than any other NPC, averaging a mushroom in under a minute of farming. Once the mushroom is obtained, return to the damp loam object and begin to grow the mushroom. In 1 minute, the rare will have spawned with a zone-wide announcement. The mushroom continues to grow. Something big is happening in the stalks. Once Human Goss has materialized, simply kill it and loot the brand new Arboreal Gulper. This mount is very straightforward and fairly unique in terms of looks, and on top of a simple obtaining method, it can be shared. Anyone who will participate in the kill the rare will be eligible to loot the frog, not just the person with the mushroom, meaning this mount can be shared between friends and even realms. With the Shadowlands being lower level content, it is possible to one-shot the rare, so be mindful with tagging methods and raid groups. Any level character can loot the mushroom, kill the rare, and loot the mount, but low level characters will need to reach 60 in order for the mount to be learnable. And dancing into 7th is the aptly named steed located on the outer shelf of the bastion's southernmost portion. Sundancer is a rare elite NPC that is only accessible by use of a Skyrider glider. This item can be obtained on the server region auction house for gold, depending on how populated your realm might be. If you're willing to fork over some few hundred gold for a glider, properly unlocking the schematic to craft the Skystrider glider might be just a bit more effort than worth it. Requiring a Kyrian character and a rank 4 Path of Ascension, the main Covenant feature, the Skystrider glider blueprint is obtained by defeating Elysian on Wisdom difficulty. Once you complete the quest and activities up to Wisdom difficulty and completing the encounter, the blueprint will be looted from the chest. Turning in the item will allow for the character to craft the gliders, whether to sell or use for obtaining the Sundancer. With the glider, head down to the Ancient Memorial, an object facing down and out south of Bastion. Clicking the memorial will result in a 30-minute buff called Sunrider's Blessing that will allow the Sundancer to be interacted with. Without the buff, he will simply knock you off with an emote, Sundancer brays a defiant call, and send an unfortunate soul plummeting down into the abyss. With the buff, he will briefly accept your company with a joyful whinny before realizing a gliderless fool has come to claim him. Having both the buff active and the glider landing upon him in the sky will prompt an extra action button, pressing it multiple times in an effort to soothe him. After multiple soothes, he will calm down, flying down to the same platform and grant a dialogue option to challenge him to a duel. You have a hidden timer of 5 minutes to defeat Sundancer for a guaranteed 100% drop of the mount if you were the one to use the glider. A much lower drop rate for anyone else just participating in the encounter. He is technically shareable for an attempt at the mount, but much easier to guarantee with simply doing the encounter yourself, as it will also grant the achievement in the hot seat. While a Kyrian is required for the Skystrider glider, any Covenant character is eligible for loot, regardless of Kyrian or not. Anyone simply looking for this mount will have a much higher odds purchasing the glider off the auction house rather than going through the Path of Ascension. With Warbounds and Warbound banking, finding a cheaper glider in a different realm and sending an alt to purchase with account white gold is highly suggested. Otherwise, a long grind for Elysian's blueprint is in the future, keeping this mount from higher up on this list despite both a 100% drop and achievement tied to it. And at number 6, we have another horse mount, Swift Gloomhoof. This beautiful purple Gloom Runner is a guaranteed drop from the Nightmare, a hidden rare elite of whom will path around Hibernal Hollow in Ardenweald. In order to see her path, which is hidden until a special item, the Dreamcatcher, is used, which to obtain, or rather a craft the Dreamcrafter, you will first need to venture into the uninstant versions of the Tyrannous Scythe. Right above where the world boss would spawn, and on top of the rocky loam shelves, will be a broken down cart. Behind the cart, right next to the massive tree, will be a small little branch named Broken Soul Web. Clicking the item will loot the object of the same name, implying it can be repaired, and will send you off to Elder Gwenna. In order to see her in Glitterfall Basin, you must first complete the questline Trouble at Gromling Carroll, followed by an even shorter quest chain, Tricky Spriggans. The beginning quest is given by the Lady of the Falls in Glitterfall Basin, and will continue up until Tricky Spriggans and finishing up with Outplayed. Once this quest has been completed, Elder Gwenna will be in her spot and allow for the creation of the repaired Soul Web, along with the requirement of 10 lightless silk. With the newly repaired Soul Web, the final step in creating the Dreamcatcher is to speak with Ysera in the heart of the forest. Anyone that is not part of the Night Fae Covenant will need to talk to the elite Queensguards posted outside the entrance, and Ysera will walk out to the enchanted Soul Web. Finally, with the fully fledged Dreamcatcher, the Nightmare is ready to be challenged. Returning back to the Hibernal Hollow and using the Dreamcatcher grants the user the buff, the Shadow's Dream, giving way to a darkened Ardenweald. Here in the Shadowlands, the Nightmare will run in a horseshoe shape from the very left portion of Hibernal Hollow, wrapping around back to the southwestern entrance. Her spawn timer is a solid 30 to 40 minutes after she's been previously killed, and anyone with the Dreamcatcher item can continuously use it in order to stay within the shadowy realm, as it's not a one-time per use item. With the War Within, she should be relatively easy to kill for anyone with reasonable gear, granting a very pretty purple Courser. There is a level requirement for looting and upgrading the Soul Web, that being 60, and making sure to dismount before obtaining the next step's item. Despite the rather long questline requirements and the time obtaining at anywhere between 1 to 2 hours, this mount is a very unique source, especially with the subtle implications of pocket realms inside the Shadowlands. This mount belongs solidly at the 6th entry. And at number 5, we have the Spinemaw Gladechewer and the Shimmermist Runner. The reason these two mounts are on a shared tier entry is simply due to the fact that they are both relatively easy to obtain and within the same vicinity of one another. Both mounts are obtained in or around the maze portion of the Tyrannus Scythe, and might as well knock out 2 mounts for 1 farm. The Spinemaw Gladechewer is obtained by killing and looting the rare spawn Gorm Tamer Tizo with a 100% drop chance from the Gorm. Tizo is spawned by massacring the local Spriggan population of tricksters, more specifically any Spriggan with the name Bristlecone. His spawn chance is completely random and can range between a few kills and spending several hours running in circles throughout the Fey maze. Gorm Tamer Tizo is much easier and faster to farm in a group of anywhere between 2 to 5. The Bristlecone Spriggan has a hyper spawn, meaning there must be at least 1 mob alive, making farming much smoother. There is also a chance to obtain an unusually large mushroom, which mentioned earlier is needed to summon the Gulper respective rare. Now onto the Shimmermist Runner, yet another horse, is a puzzle mount. To be able to phase correctly in order to see the mount, you will need to walk through a specific path through the tangle. An indication for the correct path is with a subtle blue lantern light hanging or sitting next to the entrance to the next segment. To begin, you find yourself at the Oaken Assembly, right in the courtyard before entering through the first gateway. With this, you will pass to the checkmark, lit up with a dim light. Following each lantern through the maze should result in a proper phase showcased by an attackable Shizgur. If done correctly, Shizgur will not fade from view. Defeating him will allow the Shimmermist Runner to be clicked, depositing the mount directly into your inventory. A very quick pit spot when farming for the Spinemaw Gladechewer. We felt it would be unfair to separate these two mounts. And at number 4, we have the Slime Serpent. This mount was originally a secret mount, as at the time, no one really understood how to obtain it. Many theories circulate online about what shenanigans would get to spawn or drop, and yet it all culminated when someone decided to solo heroic Plaguefall out of sheer boredom, of all dungeons to solo. When they had killed Stradama and teleported back up to the entrance of Domina's boss room, the curious Slime Serpent was awaiting. The requirements back in Shadowlands Season 1 was to simply solo the last 2 bosses of Plaguefall on heroic or mythic difficulties, without assistance from anyone else during those encounters. However, this was changed in patch 9.1 to include all bosses, including the first 2, that were required in order to complete the hidden quest to spawn the Slime Serpent. Prior to this change, people were allowed to assist in clearing up to Domina Venomblade and Margrave Stradama as long as they had left the instance before either was pulled. After the change, once the instance is loaded, there cannot be another person in the instance that is not the intended solo player. Otherwise, the Serpent will not spawn. In both Dragonflight and now the War Within, Shadowlands dungeons have become trivial and bring a difficult solo challenge to a quick and easy way to get a very interesting looking mount. In order to properly obtain the Slime Serpent, complete Plaguefall in its entirety without grouping on heroic or mythic. Once Stradama is defeated, there will be a teleport in the room to the right as you're walking back up to the pool of slime, of which had been previously landed in on the way down. Clicking the teleporter, transport pad return to surface will bring you just before the jump. Walking out will bring you to the courtyard, and to the left of the massive decaying flesh giant will be the curious Slime Serpent, languishing in its slimy pool. Petting it will grant the mount, alerting it directly. This mount is a recolor than Azoth worms introduced in Battle for Azeroth, however, taking on stitched plagued characteristics. A very straightforward mount and a menial difficulty for anyone looking to add a creepy faceless beast to their collection, making for an honorable 4th spot. And at number 3, we have another frog mount. The patient Bufonid is unbothered, moisturized in its lane, and flourishing underneath the water in Haven. This Bufonid is a 7-day quest reward in Zereth Mortis, requiring simple and easy to complete dailies to progress. To begin the quest, all you need is Zereth Mortis unlocked. From there, access into Haven is simply just speaking with the quest giver, Avna. They are sitting on the edge of the pond right next to the Vombata, Bud, who enjoys pets. The first quest requires 15 Vespoid honey, gathered from the Vespods predominantly to the south of Pilgrim's Grace, as nearly the rest of the required ingredients can be obtained on the auction house with minimal damage to gold. The second day, the Bufonid seeks 30 tenebrous ribs, followed by 200 shrouded cloth, 10 Elysian thayed fish, and 5 protoflesh. There is no requirement to obtain these items manually, so it's suggested to hold on to them for a quick and painless turn-in. On the sixth day, where Anva suggested the Bufonid might want some catalyzed apple pie. While the apple pie is obtainable from the auction house, it can also be obtained from the vendor Maitoa, located just outside Pilgrim's Grace, at a much more reliable price. There are no cipher progress requirements in order to talk to Maitoa, whose name can be translated to mean milk in Finnish. Day 7 is the final mount progress, requiring an organic melon only located in the Tazavesh, the Veiled Market Mega Dungeon. Thankfully, the vendor selling the melon is located right at the entrance, to the left, and be sure to grab some Dread Hollow Apples as well. As long as the character has completed the Ouroboros quest leading to Tazavesh, the flight path will be unlocked. If not, the quest you want to look out for will be in the Ouroboros Inn from the innkeeper broker Tauralus, the Alley Cat of Ouroboros. Completing the questline will grant an account-wide warbound access to Tazavesh. Once the melon has been purchased, return to Zereth Mortis, where the patient Bufonid eagerly awaits its healthy snack. The mount will be rewarded after the 7th day, and happily accompany you with enough food. Extremely quick quest completion with little to no resistance, and being the only other way of obtaining a protoform style mount outside of player versus player content. And at number 2, we have none other than the Sinrunner Blanchy. For some reason, she ended up in Revendreth, a realm hosting only the most prideful, cruel souls. It seems whatever Blanchy did in her life resulted in being sent to the vampiric land of Revendreth, in the mire beneath the Castle Nathria. Part of Blanchy's inclusion on this list is simply due to the fact she is an iconic side character, specifically Alliance side Westfall. A version of young Blanchy can be seen in the instance version of Old Terran Mill, Old Hillsbrad Foothills dungeon added in Burning Crusade. This implies Blanchy had traveled from Hillsbrad to Westfall, stayed in Westfall until traveling to Northrend, then returned to Westfall to meet an untimely end. This brings her to her temporary stay in Revendreth's Endmire, where she'll begin her sprint through the marsh. She will run faster than both Paladins and Death Knights at mounted speeds, but can be caught easily with skyriding or steady flying. In order to catch her before she begins her sprint, she will initially spawn in the river closest to the waterfall and root system, just beneath the old gate. Positioning further down the river in order to intercept her pathing and bring her to a halt, she will have dialogue to progress the mount questline, just the same as the patient Bufonid, bringing her an assortment of items at her behest. Like the Bufonid as well, you are able to pick up the necessary items all prior to interacting with Blanchy, making it fairly easy to leave a character out in Revendreth to log in and camp on a daily basis. Do keep in mind, her respawn ranges between an hour and 30 to up to 2.5 hours, so be ready to binge YouTube or keep busy with fishing. The items required as are follows. 8 handfuls of oats, obtained by collecting sacks of oats scattered around Westfall's mini farms to the northern part of the zone. If you're Horde, a quick way to get to Westfall is by talking to the Inner Sanctum teleporter in Legion's Dalaran. There, at the end of the hallway, will be a portal room containing several teleports. The one of interest is Karazhan. Or gathering a handful from the auction house, though the price may vary drastically. One grooming brush obtained from talking to Snickersneeze, the dredger located in Darkhaven just inside the entrance. 4 sturdy horseshoes looted on the pathways in Revendreth, the container named a discarded horseshoe found commonly in the Endmire and around Darkhaven. It's most efficient to simply wait for the horseshoes to respawn, averaging 1 to 2 minutes per shoe. The bucket of clean water requires you to fill an empty water bucket picked up in Darkhaven around the same spot as Snickersnee. With the empty bucket, fly to either Ardenweald or Bastion and take a quick dip in water. As long as it's deep enough to swim in, can the bucket be filled. For the comfortable blanket, there are multiple currencies that are valid to purchase the blanket from the vendor Tatru. He is located just outside the night market in the southernmost part of Revendreth. These currencies are herbs, ore, and leather at the cost of 10 each, Sinstone fragments at 15, and lastly, any Shadowlands meat at 30. The item used to purchase the saddle will be random and can change, but the quantity needed will not. Finally, gathering 3 Dread Hollow Apples from local vendors or fruit vendors in Tazavesh, same as the Bufonid, and the auction house. With all of these items collected, ideally before beginning the camp, will make obtaining Blanchy trivial. She does not need to be interacted with consecutively. You can split up your daily turn-ins as much as needed, and the flexibility grants her a second spot, and not at all a horse bias. We couldn't have a top 10 Shadowlands list without including objectively the easiest mount to obtain by a long shot. The number 1 spot unanimously belongs to the Wildseed Cradle. This floating seat adorned with anima-imbued leaves is obtained near root home in the Garden of the Night, requiring a keen eye as the items needed to click do not glitter nor have a purple outline. The first item is the Gardener's Basket, located between 2 pieces of bark near the fountain, the northernmost part of the garden. Next is the Gardener's Hammer, which is inside of a broken down cart below where the basket was found. The Diary of the Night is located on an elevated platform, accessible by ramps and located on top of a small fate table nearest to a drum. The Gardener's Flute is on the ground, hidden by dancing spriggans, slightly camouflaged with the bright blue flora. Lastly is the Gardener's Wand, which is tucked under a cart between the 2 of its directionally left wheels. Once these items are obtained, simply combine them into a Twinkle Stars gardening toolkit. Head over to the Tyranno Val and speak with the fairy left to the platform when facing. There she will have a separate dialogue for finding her toolkit. She will then grant you the buff Moonsight, and the Cache of the Moon will be lootable. Click there and receive your Wildseed Cradle. With that, you obtained the easiest Shadowlands mount, taking just under 10 minutes. Generously. Shadowlands has very many difficult mounts to obtain, while balanced with some of the most chill and relaxing to obtain mounts as well. Hopefully, this list has helped collectors and mount enthusiasts brave the death realm to gather some minimal effort creatures and Cradle. If you think we may have missed another easier mount or have ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below. And thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Go to HelloFresh_HermeRedX and use code HeroJan10 and receive 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. 1 breakfast item per box while subscription is active if you're in the US. The link and code are valid in all countries and respective local discounts will apply.